Welcome to the very first edition of our High Growth Leadership podcast. We are going to be introducing a sequence of leaders of particularly high growth businesses over the coming weeks. And we were absolutely delighted that Simon Moyle of Vivup joined us today and gave us what is a really interesting, far-ranging and compelling interview. So Simon, as I said, is the CEO of Vivup. They are clients of Blair West. We first got to know the business couple of years ago. They'd just been invested by Omni Partners, who are a private equity investor. And at the time, they were looking to appoint a chair. We helped them with that and have helped them subsequently with an interim CFO as well. Simon was kind enough to agree to come and join us for our inaugural podcast today. We're delighted that he did so because the growth story really is absolutely exceptional. When Simon joined the business 5 years ago, it had 17 employees and was breaking even as a lifestyle business effectively. 5.5 years later, it's 80 million revenue, 9 million EBITDA, 350 employees. And it's just this year announced that they are going to be merging with PerkBox in a deal backed by Great Hill Partners. That deal gives Omni Partners an 11 times return within 15 months. It values Vivup at more than 20 times profit. So it is really an exceptional success story. So getting a couple of hours with Simon to hear what that journey's been like was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, we're super appreciative of Simon giving his time this morning. And aside from the success that they've had from a business perspective, it was fascinating to hear from him about his personal journey, how he started off in corporate world, how he progressed and diversified his career in Dixons and PC world, and found himself in the position of being CEO of an SME. Really appreciated his a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of brave in some of the decisions he made, and so much content in there that we are very confident that lots of people will find relatable. So we hope you enjoy.
We certainly did. Hi Simon. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us today on our very first podcast. We are talking to a series of leaders and CEOs of high growth businesses, and we really appreciate you making the time to join us today. We are interested to understand, firstly, your journey with Vivup and what's made you so successful, but also a little bit more about you and what makes you tick and the challenges and the rewards of running a high growth business.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for having me. It's really good to be here.
Good. So, diving in, you are currently the CEO of Vivup, which is one of the UK's leading employee benefit platforms. Anybody who has been following the press will realise that there's been some exciting news in 2024. You are in the process of merging the business with PerkBox, but interested to hear, in your words, if you can describe Vivup, what it is, what it offers its customers.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, Vivup, we're an employee benefits business where we predominantly have a platform which houses our benefits as well as third-party benefits that our clients have got. And our mission is to help workers make more of the money that they've got to live longer and happier lives. So inside that platform, we offer four main areas of benefits. We offer lifestyle savings, which is where people can save money off the things they spend every day. So we try to encourage people not to spend incrementally, but just to save money off the stuff they're going to buy anyway. So supermarkets, eating out, etc. We've then got a range of payroll pay products, which is salary sacrifice, so things like green car scheme, cycle to work, home and electronics. And that's where employees can spread the cost of goods and services over a period of time from their salary, which makes things very affordable because there's no credit checks, but keeps them above minimum or living wage, which is important. We've then got recognition and reward tools, which is all around how do you encourage employees to have a culture that's strong and say thank you to each other, which is more important now that we're remote or hybrid as a workforce rather than being in the office. So, that opportunity to say thank you and well done. And then finally,
Vivup High Five element.
It is Vivup High Five, yes, which is a great name because it's nice to give a little high five. And then finally, we've got our wellbeing and care options. So this is a range of either digital solutions to help build resilience within workforces, as well as then counselling through an EAP service, which clinically is the best in the UK, and it's approved by APS, the Royal College of Psychology. So this is absolutely helping people to build up resilience, but then at the point of distress or need, we're there to help people and get them through whatever life's challenges are.
Fantastic, thank you for that. And you touched there on how part of your services helps remote businesses, and one of the many interesting things about Vivup is that it is 100% virtual remote business. has it always been like that? I think if on the assumption that some people do listen to this podcast, and let's hope they do, I think a lot of businesses, they're struggling with the challenges of remote working, flexible working. I think to hear such a success story of a business that's 100% remote will really interest people. Do you mind talking to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, when I took the business over in 2018, we were in an office in Surrey. There was 17 people at that particular point. But my background with Dixon's Carphone or Curry's PC World, the various names they were, my last role, I ran a national team. So I used to have the best talent from around the country. We would come together in London, which was the head office, a couple of times every month, and then everyone would work remotely. And that worked very, very well, and it was a model that I liked.
This is all way pre-COVID stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, way pre-COVID. This was, when did I have those teams? 2016, 17, 18, that kind of time. We were using early versions of Teams, Skype for Business, I think it was called at the time, and SharePoint. So we embraced the technology, which you'd imagine, being a technology company, that would be possible. So yeah, it worked incredibly well. And like I say, it showed me that it's the physical location wasn't important, and you could have a great team and a great culture without having to be together all the time. As long as you got together and you had regular rhythms and routines, it would work, and productivity would be higher because everyone had a better work-life balance and could do the stuff they enjoy. So when I took over Vivup, that was important that we were going to bring some of that culture in. So one of the early things, again, this is pre-COVID, we removed the physical servers that were in the office, moved to cloud services, moved to Teams, Office 365, SharePoint. So we had all of that kind of stuff done early. We started to, I guess, take the handcuffs off the team a little bit, in the way that they could be wherever they wanted to be, so that sales teams particularly, more time in front of the customer is always more important. So having to travel to an office is a waste of time for everybody. So all again, this was back end of 2018 and across 2019. By the time we got to COVID in 2020, we were starting to grow. So we had more people, probably about 35, I would think, at that time. And our office was creaking. We were pretty full, and we could see that in 2020, before we knew COVID was happening, that we were going to hit capacity. So we had choices to make. Did we look for a bigger office, or did we move to hot desking and etc. Which was the routes that we were absolutely going to go down and continue to recruit remotely, and give the option for people to be in the office if they wanted to. So that happened. Clearly COVID then kicked in, and things accelerated. So I think that by that point, the only thing we hadn't moved to a virtual system was the telephone. So that was the only thing that proved it a slight challenge for us, because we spent 3 months with a mobile phone driving between people's houses, with a week on call, etc. But that was a challenge. But that for us it just kind of, like you say, it moved things forward by about 4 or 5 months. We were doing this anyway. We'd already set the technology up. We'd already got rid of the desktops, and everyone had laptops. So it was really quick to get people into home. And I think for us, we grew significantly over 2020. I think we exited that year of about 100 headcounts. So we grew about 50, maybe 60 people over the course of that 12 months. And being fully remote allowed us to recruit the best talent regardless of location, which is by far the best thing I would recommend to any business, and something clearly I enjoyed when I was
at Dixon. That's the single biggest benefit of
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think there's some great talent out there. As well as that, it brings what I call economic diversity to a workforce, because when you're centered around one location, you've got people who generally are from that area, therefore people who think very similar on certain subjects and topics. All of a sudden you've got people at the top of Scotland, people from Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham. You're starting to mix cultures in there as well, and I think that's made our team stronger. It's made us. It certainly allows us to relate more to customers, understand pressures that different parts of the country face. Because let's be fair, the southeast isn't the be all and end all, and the pressures there are a little bit different from the pressures up here in Newcastle. So I think for me that's been really, really important, and it's been fantastic to watch. And when I talk to other CEOs or people who are looking at hybrid or remote, the top tip and the top thing that I say is, what you can't do is try and set up your business as if it was physical in a remote environment. So it's not a case of taking routines and just replacing them with a virtual version of the same thing. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be remote from the core. So when I look at the routines across our business, we've got weekly updates where the whole team dial in. We update them on wins, losses. Not that we have any losses actually, so we don't update them on that. Yeah, if there was any. Birthdays, new joiners, people moving house, all that type of stuff. So it mixes business and personal. There was a quiz for the first 4 years, I think. It started out as everybody did for a free month, and turned out it was quite a fun thing that we all enjoyed. So everyone loved that, and that worked. And then the individual teams, again, they were having whatever routine was relevant for them, but at least daily there was contact, and it was really important to get that contact right, because that's not really about work. It's actually about checking in with people, and then in the same ways in the office, you would spot somebody that was withdrawn a little bit or being a bit quieter than normal. You're looking out for that virtually instead. You're looking out for things like people who switch their web cameras off, because we don't know, everyone's always got the web cameras on. That would be an early sign that something's not quite right, or that somebody skipped a meeting, So you're having to retrain yourself on how to do things virtually rather than physically. But the upside is, when I ask people why they join us or why they apply to work with us, other than what you can see on LinkedIn and the phenomenal culture we've got, it's very much around the ability to live their life, because we want people to get out there and go for walks at dinner time, see the kids plays at school, drop the kids off at school, pick them back up. So for me, working remotely allows that, because it's not too difficult to nip out for 20 minutes to drop the kids off at school and come back. It's absolutely the right thing to do. While when you're in an office, that's just not possible for most people. So for me, the work-life balance is the most important part, and that's why we attract people. The remote is a massive plus for us.
Yeah, and that's all really compelling. Those are the benefits, and I suppose when we speak to a lot of our clients who are wrestling with the issue, they might not say this openly, and they might not say this to their team, but I suppose one of the big handbrakes on doing that is, to put bluntly, a lack of trust in their employees, in their team, that they are going to be applying themselves productively or as productively as they would in the office. Is that something which Vivup have wrestled with at all? Do you have processes in place to assist with that, or is it just a function of culture that you don't need to worry about it?
Yeah, I think it's a function of culture, absolutely. And I think we've all got to be honest as well, how productive are we in the office and how productive are we going to be at home? The reality is probably about the same, if not a little bit better at home. There will be times where employees are taking the mick and working a little bit less, then that's fine, because that happens in the office as much as it does anywhere else, where everyone's just having a chat, or, and productivity dips down there as a result of that. But I think, and again, if you look at yourself as an individual, I'm the CEO of the business, would I say I'm 100% productive all the time? Absolutely not. There's times where, like anybody else, I struggle and think, I get this morning, I really can't be bothered, or whatever it is. So we all
I've got a podcast to do with West. I could
exactly.
Do without this,
yeah. I don't want to have to get, that was more the travel than having to get you in the car. Not used to that bit. But I think we've all got to accept, and I think that's a big part of trust, is accepting that people will give 120% sometimes, but 80% of us, and it's not a constant 100%, and actually accepting that is the number one thing. Once you've accepted that, then it's okay, and I think employees deserve the right to be trusted. In the end of the day, you've employed them for a reason, because they're good at what they do. You provide them an environment to thrive, you train them and support them, and everybody knows what's expected of them. If that's the environment, then let them crack on and do whatever's needed to hit those numbers or do those tasks.
Fascinating. And I don't want to dwell too much on that, but I think a lot of people are fascinated by it, ourselves included. So I suppose the other biggest challenge that people would say, particularly for those at the start of their career, that the informal training you get by being around your colleagues all day, and the things you learn by osmosis that are just, it is good practice and it is bad practice. Somebody sat at home's not doing that. So what is the kind of demographic of your employees? Do you have lots of people who are new into their career, and how do they cope with their first role being a remote one?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I think I'd start by saying it isn't for everybody. We appreciate that. I think while we've what are we now? We're 200. No, we're not. We're about 300 staff. Sorry, plus our counsellor. So, but about 350, 400. So. Of that base, we probably lost around 20 people who have left purely because they wanted the physical environment. We're not going to shy away from that, and I do talk quite openly about that. And and generally they are younger people that have made that decision because they want the office environment. However, there's about 200 people that have joined us specifically because we are remote. And again, that mixes all ages. So our demographics are fairly broad in both male, female, as well as age. People with kids, without kids. So it's pretty representative of the UK, if I'm honest, the work base that we've got. And it can definitely be a challenge, I think, at times to be at home, because sometimes you do want to be around other people. And what we encourage is the individual teams to do what's right for them. So everybody will meet up at different frequencies. So I know this week our GRC, Governance, Risk and Compliance team, they met up, had a work session for the day, went out to Canary Wharf and had some fantastic fun, and it looks great, the stuff they put on LinkedIn. So that's an example where, you know, that's a team that decided that's what they need to do right now, you know, and the frequency of which people get together is completely down to the individual line managers. But then, like I say, it's the virtual routines as well, and as I say, the on the job learning. You know, the team are very open, you know, so I know I can ring anybody at any time and they'll answer. We've got things like 2 hours of focus time between 12 and 2 where we don't put meetings in the business. So you know that if you want to ring someone, they're going to be available between 12 and 2 because they're not in a meeting. So it's things like that I think help. So as I say, it's not about replicating how we work in the office. It's about figuring out how does it work remotely. And like I say, that focus time is exactly that. It's an opportunity where anyone knows, like for me, for example, I'm a nightmare to get. But between 12 and 2, I've not got any meetings. So actually, that if you're going to ring me then.
So you've got 300 people ringing you between 12 and 2.
And as I said at the top of the conversation, this podcast is about growth, about high growth businesses and the challenges and rewards of leading them. You've touched on a couple of things there, but do you mind giving us a flavour of the growth journey of Vivup? So kind of since you joined, just giving us a concept of the scale of growth.
Yeah, definitely. So when I joined Vivup, as I say, we were about 17 people. It was a fairly break-even business. I would describe it as a lifestyle business where the founders, you know, done very well. They'd grown it to a good level, and they were taking good salaries from it, good dividends, etc. But growth, you know, it was fairly flat, and like a lot of lifestyle businesses oscillated, so it was up and down every year, you know, in a fairly even manner. I guess when they brought me in, the aim was to build this business up, to scale it, well, to see if it could be built and scaled. And then ultimately to exit for the founders. And I think in the kind of 5.5 years now, we've grown to, as I say, about 350 people with the two businesses, and then once we merge with PerkBox, just over the 500 mark. From an EBITDA point of view, this year for us will be around 9.5 million. Say from a break even, throw in PerkBox, it'll be about 15 million. So from an EBITDA, and so really quick growth. That's 5.5 years,
5.5
which
years. Wow.
is incredible. You know, even I look back and think just, wow, you know, I didn't expect to do that. You know, I left a big corporate to take on a nice little SME, and I've accidentally built a corporate, which is interesting.
It's a good thing to do by accident. It's a good trick to have. As you mentioned it there, what would you characterise as the key differences then of working in a corporate to working in an SME and now a much larger SME?
I think the agility and the ability to actually move with the markets. You know, we've done what we've done. We've grown the way we have because we've disrupted markets, because we've been unique, and we've done things our way. We haven't tried to replicate anybody else. And really, you know, as weird as it sounds, I don't look at what the competitors are doing because it's irrelevant. What matters is what we're doing, the mission we're on, and every action that we do is driving towards that mission. So, you know, I'd be very confident, and the stats tell me when we win things like the top SME from Elite Awards this year, or the Times Top 100 Places to Work. The results from those surveys tell me that everybody knows what we're trying to achieve. Everybody knows our mission, and I think that's really important. In a big corporate, you know, as I say, I spent 20 years with Dixon's Carphone Currys, and having 20,000 people, how do you make sure that everybody understands? And that was always a challenge that I had there. Here, I've never found that problem. Everybody understands we're trying to help people, as I say, to make more of the money they've got, live longer and happier lives. And every action we do is driving to a 5-year plan that's very public. We talk about it every time we get together. The first 2 slides are the 5-year plan and where we are and our 5 values. And that's really important because we talk about it so frequently. And as I say, everybody as a result understands, and it means that we can move quickly. If something happens in the market, like a COVID, instantly we can react. You know, and I can remember the day that the lockdown was announced, we made a decision to give away our mental health services to the public sector free of charge. The day after we'd launched that, and it was out within 2 weeks, 52 customers or public sector organisations with nearly 250,000 staff had signed up to that. And the ability to put that level of help into an area of the market that needs it, that quickly, that's incredible. And, a corporate would still be thinking about it, discussing it, trying to figure out the ROI. I didn't know if there was an ROI on that. I didn't know how much it was going to cost me. But the reality is I knew it was the right thing to do, and I knew our customer base would have responded well to that. And therefore, instinctively, I thought I'll figure it out later on. The right thing to do now is to help.
Are you concerned about losing that agility as you continue on this rapid trajectory?
No, I don't think so, because, well, there's always a small concern in the back of my mind, but we've invested a lot in the team over the past 5 years. We've got a leadership training program that I put in place at the beginning of 2020. Actually, it was 2 weeks before lockdown, the first one. But we're in cohort 5 of that, and this is now must be about 70 people in the business, leaders, managers, aspiring leaders, that we've took through a 6-month program of leadership, which is trying to embed the right behaviours, the right skills, so that we can stay resilient and quick and agile. So I think it's easier to do it from a small company getting bigger than it is to go into a big business and try and change a culture, because what I see is every year we get stronger, every year our culture gets better, because we've got more people trained in this logic, more people that understand our ethos, and people are specifically recruited in. We embrace difference. Where we have a gap in knowledge or a gap in personality styles, we'll actually recruit into that gap, which is, like I say, it's a lot easier when you've grown from being tiny with that logic, rather than kind of, if I took on a 2,000 seat organization today, I'd have to assess it first to try and work out where the gaps are. It's a very different challenge.
Indeed. It's fascinating how well, if you don't mind me saying, you've adjusted to that SME environment, because as you know, we work with largely an SME client base, largely private equity backed clients. When we're presenting a candidate for an executive leadership position, somebody who comes from a corporate background, we're always dealt with the challenge that they won't understand how to be successful in a nimble SME environment. They're used to having support structures, they're used to having fantastic systems and processes around them, they're used to having teams of people who will run off and do their bidding, and they won't be able to adjust. We work very hard where we think it has merit to convince our clients otherwise. Why do you think you were able to make that transition so successfully, and did you find it hard?
Probably because I was 20 years, I was told I was never going to make it in the corporate environment, to be honest with you. So, because I wasn't a corporate person, is the reality. I didn't do things the way that the corporate industry kind of says.
So you'd always felt like you were kind of stuck out a little bit.
Yeah, and I was interested. I was talking to some businesses yesterday, and one of the challenges that I faced in the corporate environment was I was always told to be less me, and I would never progress if I kept on being like me, because I wasn't doing whatever people wanted. I wasn't looking at others and trying to adapt to that way of working. I wasn't trying to toe the line, that type of thing. But that's why I had success in the corporate space. What I really did at Dixon's, I didn't spend 20 years in one role. I effectively had 3-year stints, more or less, or 2-3 years in lots of different jobs, and each one I dealt with as an isolated kind of little unit. So what I did is I built a little SME inside of Dixon's lots and lots of times. Each one is an independent business, each one with its own skill set, each one that kind of adapted and molded. And I used the facility, kind of the rest of the business, as if they were third parties. So in the same way as now I would go out and partner with somebody or find a supplier, that's how I dealt with it. So my network inside of Dixon's was no different to my network externally now. There were just people that I liked, got on with, that we had respect for each other. And in the same way now, as people deliver for people, that's how I got what I got in Dixon's. They didn't do it because I had a title or anything like that. I got the support from the third party functions because they wanted to help me as an individual, my team. So yeah, I think for me, I've always been running SMEs. I've just been running little ones inside of a big corporate. And I think it's the only way you can actually survive, I think, in a big corporate, in my view, is to forget the fact that you're in a big corporate, just forget in the same way as now I've got external market pressures that cause me problems that I can't deal with. Back then, it was the wider company was the external market pressure that I couldn't deal with. So, you've got to, once you accept that, it's fine.
Okay. We'll pause that thought for later, but we're going to ask you later about kind of your influences and advice, and good advice you have, and I imagine stop being yourself is not going to feature. It's one of the best bits of advice you've ever had, or anybody's ever had.
No.
Before we get in, I just want to spend a little bit more time on Vivup. So that's unbelievable growth, and how would you describe that journey? Has that been through M&A? Has it been organic growth? what were the key strategic decisions that enabled you to achieve that level of growth? And can you talk to us a little bit as well about kind of external funding you've had to enable that?
Yeah, well, the vast majority of that is organic and self-funded. So we went through a management buyout in the December 2022. So the vast majority of that growth, as I say, was self-funded. I was very conscious when I took on the business. As I say, it was a family business that had been sustaining their lifestyle. So what I didn't have was pots of cash to go and spend anywhere or buy businesses and stuff like that. So it was all about putting together a strategy first and foremost. And I think, you know, any business needs to have a 5-year plan, a clear goal, a clear understanding of what we're trying to get to. And in my case, it was to exit for the founders. It was to get to that sale. Didn't know what that sale looked like at that point because I was a first-time CEO. So what did I know about selling a business, you know? Didn't even understand what private equity was back then and had no idea what a trade sale was. So that was irrelevant. All I knew was that there was 2 things that were going to make a difference to be able to grow and sell that business. The first one was EBITDA and driving the profitability. And the second one was just resilience, making sure that I had a solid business that wasn't reliant on any particular area, which I now know is multiple. So the two different parts. So yeah, it was done through, I guess, just smart decisions all the way through that, building a competent leadership team first and foremost. That was probably the first thing I did in 2019 was to put in place a group of, at the time, heads of departments. And set up a structure where, because, you know, like a lot of SMEs, everybody was doing a little bit of everything, and actually that's not very productive over a longer period of time. So yeah, we started building out structures and routines, started giving autonomy to different areas, so the heads off could actually make their own decisions. They had their own budgets, they had their targets, and like say, when you employ someone, you trust them to do a good job, so let them do a good job. That allowed me to continue.
Sorry to interrupt. Does that come naturally to you? Is that are you a natural delegator and giving people the space to make decisions, or is that something you've had to work on?
Definitely had to work on. By natural, I would be a bit more of a control freak. I like to be involved in everything, I like to know what's going on, and definitely when it's an area of my expertise. So sales, as an example, I spent 20 years in that background. You know, so to bring in a head of sales and allow them to create whatever structure and way of working he wanted, and it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, because prior to bringing him in, I was doing that myself for the company. So yeah, it's hard to step away, but I think it's important to do that, because as I say, you trust these people. You've got to make sure that you give them environments and you back away. What I saw very quickly, again, this is a big difference between the corporate and the SME world. Doing that allows me then to drive the strategy forward. It allows me to look at the market. It allows me to be a bit more pragmatic, because I can kind of helicopter view of what's happening in the business, and then I can spot opportunities better than if I'm close to the detail. And I think that was one of the criticism I had of myself in my last kind of few years in Dixon's. I was probably too close to the detail and therefore unable to spot some of the kind of simple opportunities. So Vivup, I made a conscious choice to make sure that I didn't kind of fall into that trap. Which is why I never learned a lot of the systems and the intricacies that sit there, because like I say, if you don't know, you don't know. But yeah, that I think for me was massively important. Like I say, really good solid team that allowed us to generate cash. And obviously in the business you need cash. Without that you're not doing anything, and that allowed us to reinvest that back into people. And the founders were phenomenal in what they promised me, which was they wouldn't be taking any dividends or anything out of the business while I was growing it. So every penny I was making, I was able to reinvest. So I knew that I was in complete control of the ability to grow the business. So the pace of it was down to me to control, not go too fast, not go too slow, and just to get that right. And like a lot of scaling businesses, and a lot of, I spoke to a lot of people who took over from founders. The biggest challenge I had then was trying to keep everybody calm, because I was building it to a scale that was scary for founders. Because going from 17 people in a little office where you can see everything that's happening, to all of a sudden you're kind of 100 people fully remote and you can't see anything. It was very hard for them, and that allowed them though to back away from the day to day and to hand over more and more of the kind of control, because again they trusted me, and that was delegating that trust down.
You didn't join the CEO, you joined as strategy director, didn't you, to look at the business and the opportunities for growth. After that assessment, did did you know this was possible? Was this the plan? Did you sit down with the founders and say, oh, we're going to be 500 people within 5 years, fully remote?
Nope. I agreed to consult for 3 months. That was my original thing. In January 19, I did agree to take it on permanently. I could see there was potential because, without speaking negative of the market, back then it was a very complacent market. The competitor hadn't really innovated for a very long time. The fees that were being charged were poor and the value was poor and all that type of stuff. So I could see that there was an awful lot of opportunity just because of the way the market was structured. But no, I didn't think this was possible. I don't think I could because, and again, it was the first year, particularly 2019. What was challenging there is I was used to, I guess, the way I worked in Dixon's, where you would start 10, 20 things off. And as I say, the external environment being the company would kind of put brakes onto half of those. I did things in my normal pace. I started 10 or 20 things and all of a sudden they all came off and it was like, oh my God, we haven't got the capacity to do this. So, we ended up having to make tough choices on what not to do. And that became the hardest part of 19, 20, 21 was choosing what not to do as opposed to what to do, and really focus on what we call the big rocks rather than the small pebbles to make sure that we were really driving that strategy.
Fascinating. And you said it was self-funded until 2022, and then you did a management buyout, and that was you were invested in by Omni Partners. And you said when you joined the business, you didn't even know what private equity was. So there'll be people, hopefully people listening to this who don't know what private equity is. There'll be CEOs hopefully listening who are thinking about a private equity round. Who'll be fascinated as we are to hear of your experiences from not knowing anything about that, to going through that process. I know a little bit about this already, and I know that your approach was atypical, shall we say. So do you mind sharing how you went through that process?
Yeah, I think that's a theme. Nothing I do is quite normal or typical, is it? Yeah, I think for us, it was for me, it was very important to find the right private equity backers. It had to be an organisation that shared the vision that we had, as well as my mentality around people being the business, not spreadsheets and numbers and all that type of stuff. Don't get me wrong, I know my numbers and I'm very good with the spreadsheets, but people are build the business. So when did I start the process? 2021, so slightly strange time, just after COVID. Obviously, we'd grown very rapidly. I knew that was down to the phenomenal business and nothing to do with COVID, but I always knew there was going to be a challenge to convince the market that this was not a COVID-based business. So we had a lot of, we involved the company, so a company called KBS Corporates. They were our advisors. They put together a fantastic IM, or information memorandum, and that explained the business because it's fairly complicated. There's various different spokes. That got interest from a lot of different companies. I ended up meeting about 55 private equity firms in around about 6 weeks. I was doing 3 or 4 1-hour Teams calls a day, which was probably the most draining time of my entire life, if I'm honest with you, because it's like being on shore continually. And it was all around me going through and answering their questions, which they'd sent in advance, and just having a conversation about the business. But equally, I was trying to find out about them. And through that process, at the end of each one, I just kind of scored each firm out of 5 on my desire to work with them going forward, which, like I say, most people think you're the one pitching to them and they're the ones that are going to decide if they want to bid for you. And while that is true, it's a two-way relationship. So I was dismissing the ones that I wasn't interested in. Generally speaking,
you might be asking what would have led you on a call to think, I'm scoring them 1 or 2.
Yeah, I generally, if they were boring, stuffy, didn't respond to my jokes, because let's be fair, I got crappy jokes, and if they're not going to laugh at them in there, then when they try to impress me, then there's no chance they're going to work well with me. It's the cultural thing, we are a fun environment, we are passionate about what we do, and if you cannot just get on with someone from a personal human level, then what's the point? There's no way that's going to work as an investor, because you're going to have quite a stunted relationship. So there was again, it's just stupid things like they would always ask if there was any questions around their firm, and the question I asked everybody was, how deep are your pockets, or do you have big checks? Just, it was a joke, but it was the reaction to that just told me a lot about the kind of people that were sitting opposite me. So it's just things like that I think were important. So yeah, in the end we did end up with a lot of bids. I can't remember the exact number, maybe 10, 15 bids for us. We came close to a few sales that didn't actually turn out at all, which again was a hard thing for me, because failure isn't something that happens. So it was really weird. In most cases, I say it was this notion that it was a COVID business and everyone was trying to understand, and because we continued to grow very quickly while we're going through that process, it just, I don't know, there was a lot of concern, not so much concern, a lot of kind of lack of understanding, because we are in a strange market. We're a SaaS company or a benefits company, but fundamentally we make our money through what looks like retail, and it's that retail wasn't an area anyone was investing in. So trying to justify and explain how solid that data was and how reliable our revenue sources were was a challenge. We then found Omni partners who got it straight away. Charlie, the private equity partner there, he came from one of our partners, so he'd been in the PE house that invested in Hasty Pay, so he understood us. He'd actually seen our business growth directly. He'd understood that when we partnered with other people that we delivered on our promises, and we were very, very good with our customers. So that part was a big tick already. And I think when I met with Steve, the founder of Omni, his belief in people was the thing that shone through, and everything he talked about was people. It wasn't about the spreadsheets, the numbers, and all of that detail. He was able to very quickly grasp, the two of them actually, the business and what we did, and some of their questions and some of their suggestions I just thought were brilliant, and I thought we can just tell these are the people that I want to work with, because they're not going to be imposing. They're going to allow me to get on and run the business, but they're also going to give me the support, direction, and more importantly, a bit of challenge in the right places. And that's exactly what happened. We spent 15 months with them, and then managed to secure another sale to Great Hill Partners, which that was 3.5 years ahead of plan, but for not too distant from the money that we expected. So the partnership there worked, and I think that's why all of you've got to kiss a few bad frogs before you get your prince type thing. I would say to anyone that's looking at private equity investment, you've got to, don't go for the first one. Really, it is a game that you've got to play. You've got to go through the motions on various areas. You've got to learn, and obviously I was first time, and for anyone that's first time, fail first, learn quickly, move on.
Interesting. 54 frogs is a lot of frogs, I've got to say.
It is.
Seriously, on that note, so what we work with private equity backed businesses. When people are going through a process, the challenge of keeping a business running whilst running a process at the same time is incredibly difficult. And your business was going through supersonic growth at the time, and you were running a process where you were meeting with 55 potential investors, which is about 5 to 10 times as many as most people would meet with in a process. So how did you cope with that you and as a management team? Did you have to lean heavily on those around you?
Yeah, 100%. And it's, as I said earlier on, we built a management team first and foremost, and it was all done by design. My mission was to bring the business to exit, so therefore every decision I'd made was to grow the business in a sustainable way, which meant that I'd already by that point, those heads of were in. Some of those have been promoted to director level. Other directors have been brought into the business to mean that I had a very solid foundation. At the same time as I was kicking off the P process, I brought into C-suite, and that was when I actually changed my title to CEO. So I kind of formed that kind of the two levels there, directors and C-suite. So all of that was done to allow me to have the business running, and we call the board or the directors the operating board, because they operate the business. Me and the C-suite, we don't. That's not our job. Our job is not to get our hands dirty and get involved in the day-to-day running of the business. It's to set the pace, the direction, the strategy, to explore the markets and make sure that the business is on sound footing. The operating directors, their role is to run that business. And I was really proud as I was going through that process that the operating board did run the business, did grow the business, because that tells me why you should trust your team. Because if that team needed me to make the small decisions and drive trading, then we would never have grown that far, and I would never have been able to sell that business in the way that we did. And equally, once we got into private equity, there was a lot I had to learn there. Again, I'd never worked in a private equity firm. I'd never worked with funders and banks and advisors. So, I set myself on a mission to learn all of that in the 12 months after the MBO. And I could do that because I had such a good team that I could rely on. And don't get me wrong, when things go wrong or when they need my help, some advice and support, I will do that. I coach and I mentor and I'll get involved with any of those decisions. But I'd rather they came to me with the problem rather than me having to find it actively. And we've got data all over the business. We've got fantastic reports, routines. So yeah, if anything goes wrong, it can be seen. And
Did
I think
you
again,
have
that's all
them
good.
pre-PE, or was that private equity influence, but you already had really good reporting?
Yeah, we already had all that. So we're a data-driven business, so we'd already built a data team pre-PE. That was an important part. Absolutely.
Known Omni Partners, if you on our Omni Partners website, they say they invest in mission-led businesses. I imagine that helped them stand out as well amongst the 55. And I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I think most businesses would claim to be mission-led. I think you can feel when you're working with the business that is, and just the extent to which you talk about that mission, talk about your people. So yeah, I imagine that was a powerful factor, and yeah, I think Omni got a 10 or 11 times return. So I imagine a pretty happy frog.
Yeah, very happy frog after 11 times return in 15 months. Yeah, they were actually a brand new PE firm as well, so we were their first kind of major investment as well. So to get that level of return in that speed, good luck for the rest of their time in PE trying to match that one.
Golden touch. And so you've talked about the process and what that was like. Equally, there'll be CEOs listening to this, hopefully. We'll keep saying that. That will be thinking, right, what's it like afterwards? What is it like working with you once the PE houses are out of schmooze mode, when they're not trying to win in a competitive process and they're actually sitting around your board table? What's that dynamic like? What's your experience of that?
Yeah, I think, again, my experience is probably not typical, if I'm absolutely honest, because you kind of get what you deserve in business. So that's in PE, that's exactly the same as in general business and with the staff that you've got. So, during the process, we make each other promises. So yes, I commit to the budgets and our growth and what we're going to do, but equally they agree to how they're going to work with me, So I did hold the guys to account. There was times where, they would ask me for various bits and pieces, and I would say no. Leave me crack on with the business. I haven't got time to be getting that level of data. I'm not distracting my team. And I don't think PE firms are used to that, because they're used to somebody asks and says jump and you say how high. But you've got to remind each other that we both contracted into this to work in a certain way. Obviously Omni were fantastic, as I say. So we they didn't take a seat on the kind of the operating board or any of that part. We had a corporate board, but as far as my exec and my operating board, we cracked on exactly the same way as we did pre-Omni. There was no difference from a day-to-day operational element. There was no interference, and what we worked with them is making sure that we got the management reporting and the board pack right, so that we could address any questions from a group point of view, and deal with anything that way. But yeah, the guys delivered on what they said, which from what I understand is fairly rare. But a large part of that is because of the contracting pre-signing, and getting that right. And that's where the kissing lots of frogs to get the right one is important.
You're not talking formal contracts. No. You're talking informal, having a really honest discussions about how is this going to work in reality. Yeah. In the same way as you do your directors or any member of the team, you've got kind of verbal contracts that you've all got with each other around how you're going to work, and there's no difference from a PE firm to a partner or a member of staff. Everyone's the same. We're all people. We're all trying to get to the same end result. So what's the point in putting in ridiculous processes or figures that are going to slow that down? In the end of the day, I think if a firm is going to invest in a company, they're investing in a group of people within the management team, their ability to lead, their strategy. If they're going to get in the way of that, what's the point in investing in it? Yeah. So in the same way as I'm saying, I employ people and then trust them to do their job, that should be the view of a PE firm. And luckily for me, it absolutely was with Omni. Well, not luckily, because actually we checked that first. That was their view. We're investing in you as a team, and we trust you to deal with it. And like I say, that's why we chose Omni Partners. Okay. So sticking with Vivup and that journey for a moment longer, you've already touched on the importance of the team that you built there, and you had to build the team rapidly as the business scaled rapidly. Interested to hear your key learnings on building a successful SMT in a high growth business.
Mm-hmm. I think I alluded to it, I touched on it earlier on. The management training is probably the most important important part. I've always worked on a saying that I can remember here a long time ago, and that is, it's very easy to promote people to the level of incompetence. And what that means is, quite often businesses will take a star performer and give them the promotion to the next role, only to realise that they weren't equipped to deal with that role or didn't want that role, and end up leaving. So you've just lost your star because you made a mistake, and that's on you as a boss. So for me, it's about making sure that we never make that mistake, that what we do is we invest in the team, we understand them, and we give them the skills to progress. And what that looks like for me, and again, this is not just at Vivup, it's previously as well, is that when someone gets a promotion, they generally should be doing 50% of the role anyway. It's natural. You've already assessed them. You've already checked that they can do it. They understand what the role is. You understand that they're capable of doing it. And when they move into that new position, everybody knows what support and development's needed. And I think for me, that's like I say, that's critical. It means that we've got a group of coaches that we work with. So right across my management team and the level below that, and actually some below there as well. These guys have had coaching through the leadership program. If anything was to become challenging, or if there were any pressure, the first thing we asked them to do was go straight back to their coach, and that's external to the business. It's not there. We just pick up the invoice at the end of the month, and that's just a level of comfort that they know they've got that all the time, because you say we don't always have the answers inside, and sometimes you do just need to talk to someone externally, don't you? So yeah, professional training through leadership program, and then professional coaches have definitely been a huge part of why we've had the success.
And that, again, very unusual. Simon and I are both big believers in executive coaching, and we've had coaches ourselves. You don't meet a lot of businesses where they kind of provide that for the entire leadership team, SME businesses, to that extent. That's really interesting. Yeah. You think the return for the business on that, as well as it being the right thing to do, the returns definitely justified it.
100%, absolutely. It's important to find the right coaches. So it's not random. In our case, it's two people that we've been working with now for 5 years. They wrote that leadership program specifically for Vivup. It wasn't an off-the-shelf package. It was through explaining what we were trying to do. And again, remembering how small we were back then. So they understood the vision. But now, they were like an extension to our business. They've been part of our growth. They come to our Christmas parties and stuff like that. They are part of the team, and it means that I can trust them with anybody. If I hand whether it's coaching, whether it's doing some more MBTI work with us, or whether it's the leadership program, we've got that relationship where I can say what my pressures are, what the stresses are in the business, and they can help me to find a solution for that can be delivered through the people, which is great. So yeah, finding a good solid set of people like that is key.
Fantastic. And finally, before we delve into all the juicy stuff about you rather than the business, do you mind just talking a little bit about the merger with PerkBox and what the future looks like for the combined entity and Great Hill Partners, and how that came about?
Yeah, no, I think it's probably the most exciting of all the parts of the journey. So while we've had a phenomenal 6 years, these next 6 years I'm incredibly excited about. So the reason why the merger with PerkBox made clear sense to myself was, we as Vivup are very strong in the public sector. We support 85% of the NHS. We support about 1.3 million other public sector workers. That is our kind of bread and butter, always has been. And while we've grown into the private sector, we've got about 1,000 clients. It was going to take a long time to become fairly dominant there. Our products are salary sacrifice and the whole and wellbeing. They're the two major parts of our business. With PerkBox, what you've got is you've got a business that's very strong in the private sector, with a large base, particularly within the SME and kind of mid corporates, that kind of area. And their product set was very much around the SaaS platform itself, the perks that sit on there, and then the engagement tools. So it's rare to find two businesses with similar levels of net revenues that actually have so little overlap. So if you put the two businesses side by side, like you say, there's about 1,000 customers overlap, you'd say, but everything else is completely complementary, and our product sets are completely complementary. So when we put them together, what we've got, I believe, is the best product set in the market within EB, and the most diverse customer base, because we'll be about a third NHS, a third public sector, and a third private as well. So that puts us into an incredibly strong position to win across all markets. From a Vivup point of view, when we put together the strategy for the 5 years, we expected to get to certain sizes. with a merger of PerkBox basically is getting us exactly where we said in 5 years. So effectively, it's 3 months worth of work to get 5 years worth of growth through that merger.
And how did it come about? Did you approach them? Did they approach you? Was it Great Hill looked at combining the two businesses together? How did it come about?
Yeah, to be fair, I'm trying to remember myself how it came about. I remember meeting with Great Hill earlier in 2023.
Great Hill are a private equity house, aren't they, based in London and America?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, Boston and London. So I met with the Great Hill team probably summer, I'm thinking. Again, I was meeting with a lot of private equity houses. There's always a lot of interest in Vivup because of the growth. So as I think I said earlier on, my mission for 2023 was to learn the private equity market. So I was meeting with every advisor and every PE firm that asked to meet, just so I could learn. And yeah, Great Hill were one of those. I obviously got talking to them. They were very impressed with the business. They invited us back in and they presented a phenomenal deck, which just showed me the amount of research that they'd done in the market, and why they believed that Vivup were the only company that were worth investing in within the space, and where they saw PerkBox as being an ideal synergy. Interestingly, with Omni, we'd already came to that same conclusion. Okay. But Omni being an early PE firm, and Vivup being the size we were, PerkBox were a similar size. So I don't think we were quite ready to make an acquisition ourselves to that level. So when Great Hill Partners presented something to us, which was along the lines of thinking we already had, it made sense, So we weren't looking to exit from Omni. So therefore, there was a lot of talking to be done around, why would we, why would Omni exit so early in a stage when the business is growing so well? But Omni have stayed in, they have rolled forward and reinvested in the business, and therefore we all found a way of making it work, just because it was too compelling not to. Yeah. And Great Hill had the ability, the backing, and the knowledge to help us to do this. And again, I'm not naive. I'm still a first-time CEO. I'm still learning. So actually having the experience that Great Hill now provide with their team, and Doug, who's the current CEO of PerkBox, who's staying on as the executive chairman, that support around me is going to help me to move this joint business forward.
Fantastic. And the status of that currently, it is awaiting FSA clearance, is that correct?
It actually got that 2 days ago.
Fantastic.
So it's
Fantastic.
FCA's clearance said, I don't know when this is going out. Hopefully I've told the team by then. But it's be fine. But yeah, we got the FCA, which is why I can say it's a merger that's happening rather than it's not pending the FCA. But that's, again, it's an interesting time. We've had 6-7 weeks now where we've announced the pending transaction subject to FCA, and it makes it hard because you can't make any real decisions. We've been reviewing the businesses, learning the businesses. But yeah, now we can plan for it. We know when it's going to transact, and we can work for that date now.
Okay. And are you looking forward to the challenge of merging businesses? Brings to mind Jack Welch, the 1990s business guru, says there's no such thing as a merger. Somebody's acquiring someone, and if everybody doesn't understand that, then it's destined to fail. So to be a bit negative and dramatic. But is that totally outdated logic? Is that not the case anymore, and that not reflective of how you guys are approaching this?
Yeah, it's completely outdated. I don't think it stands true at all now. What we've got is two fantastic businesses that have grown very, very well, independently work fantastically well in their markets, and as a result, across the two companies, we've got 500 fantastic people. So it is a merger. It's not Vivup buying PerkBox or PerkBox buying Vivup. We'll adopt some of our policies and processes from one or the other company, and we'll make brand new ones in other areas. There's no decisions being made on technology or platforms or anything like that. Because I've never been precious, and nobody in Vivup's precious on how we operate. So it doesn't matter. As long as it's getting to the long-term strategy, which we've got between the two of us, we'll make that change. And like I say, it could be completely independent from the way the two companies operate today. So I'm very excited about it.
Fantastic.
Fantastic, that's great. Thank you for all of that, Simon. Also curious to ask a little bit more about you without getting into the realms of anything that's too icky. But I wonder if you could just take us back to the start of your career and sort of first forays into the world of work and sort of recollections from when you first got into the PC World business.
Yeah. Well, I started PC World actually when I was 17, so it was a long, long time ago now.
Not straight from school?
I actually worked at Wet n Wild before that, so anyone who's listening in the Northeast will probably remember Wet n Wild. That was my first job. In fact, I finished my GCSEs, and it was obviously the summer, and I wanted to work. I wanted to make my own money. So the first thing I did is I picked up the Yellow Pages. For anyone old enough to remember what that is, it's a big book with lots of phone numbers in it. I thought, who's going to be recruiting right now? Leisure made sense. It's the summer, so leisure. I went backwards. First phone call I made was Wet n Wild, because that was the last one in the book. Spoke to someone called Sarah Wise, who was the kind of worked in the kitchens there, and I said, have they got any jobs? They said yes. They said, we'll bring you in for an interview. And I said, brilliant, I'll see you in 20 minutes. Jumped on my bike and cycled down there. So again, I kind of forced that one because I just went there, got that job. But yeah, PC World, I started about a year after that. It was a Christmas temporary job, as I say, at the time it was merchandising, so stacking shelves over Christmas. Turns out I was a bit rubbish at that and never stacked a shelf yet. And I just loved dealing with the public. I loved serving customers and I loved helping people. You know, I knew a bit about tech and what have you. And I found it really easy to find solutions. So what typically would happen is people would come in to buy a cartridge, which was the aisle I was stacking on my first shift, and they would walk over a printer and 2 cartridges and a cable. And I guess that was me learning to sell and what have you. From there, my career kind of just grew. You know, like I say, I was very successful in sales during that kind of first Christmas temporary role. They took me on permanently. I did try university. I went down south to High Wycombe for a year. I transferred to the Slough shop, where I was top salesperson there as well. In fact, I was top salesperson in the company over the course of that 12 months. But university wasn't for me. I didn't really enjoy it, largely because you have to, do as you're told. And turn up at certain times and stuff. So yeah, I came back up north, transferred to the Gateshead shop, and that's when I decided I needed to probably be serious now and think of a career rather than just have fun and selling, which is what I've done to date. That's when I learned, and I used to get, and I still do. You know, when you close a big deal as a salesperson, you're really happy. You know, it kind of, you get a big kick from it. You know. But I started getting that through coaching and helping and mentoring other people. So new starters would be assigned to me, and I would teach them how to sell, or I would teach them the role, and then I would watch.
Excuse me, were you teaching them the way that you did it, or the way that the business had decided that it should be done?
Oh, no, I teach them my way. Which, to be fair, there was little bits of the sales process that the company taught us. I still use a lot of the kind of, anyone that used to work for Dixon's, I remember the 5 major generals. I still use that type of stuff, actually, because some of the old-fashioned methods are, they're pretty solid. But yeah, no, I would absolutely... selling's not hard. It's about people, isn't it? You know, in the end of the day, if someone's got a need and you can help fix that need, you're going to make a sale. So it's not... So it's more listening than talking. And if you get that listening bit right at the beginning, and it doesn't matter what you're selling, you're always gonna win.
Is that the key, the listening element?
Oh, completely. You know, it's lots of questions at the beginning of any sale. Like I say, no matter what the nature of that sale is, to understand the needs of the person, to understand their stresses, pressure points. If they've got a current solution, what do they love about that solution? All that type of stuff, which means you can then find something that's going to tick the boxes to what they already like about what they currently got, which makes a transition to a new product or service easier, and then you're addressing the things that make that they've got pressure points that's causing the problems now. You know, you can't lose if you're selling that kind of way. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed teaching, and that's what moved me into management. You know, I've had some fantastic people that supported me through my career. You know, it was Anthony Partington, I remember, that got me into management, and yeah, I really love that. In fact, the sales trainers that I mentioned that do our leadership training at Vivup, they were the sales trainers for PC World at the time. They took me through what was stepping into management program at the time, which is why when they went self-employed, to be fair, I reached straight back out with them, because they taught me a lot of what I know today. So yeah, it was a really interesting journey. I really enjoyed moving forward. As I say, you know, for me, once I'd done shop management for a bit, the next obvious step, I suppose, was business to business. You know, I'd built a reasonable career in what was transactional retail sales. Business to business was only meant to be for a few months for me while I was waiting for my second child to be born, because apparently I was pissing everybody off, getting a bit bit edgy as the second child was due.
And in the business, were you proactively encouraged to seek diversity, or were you going to people saying, I've done this, I've been a success at that, what's the next thing for me?
I don't recall, if I'm absolutely honest with you. Things just seem to happen naturally. You know, I said before, you kind of, you're doing 50% the next role before it happens. I kind of just naturally, I don't know, I want to learn and develop and push all the time. So I would just naturally move to different areas. If I'm honest, business to business was an area in North Shields that was failing. It was the underperforming part of the shop, and I like perfection. So therefore it was letting the team down. So I decided I'll go and fix that, and that moved me into a relationship with customers in opposed to transaction, and I loved B2B. Within the North Shields store, we went from being one of the worst in the company to the best in the company in 12 months, which was incredible. We did it with the same team as well, which is even better, because all of the principles that I still use today around empowerment and coaching, development, and trusting people. But it meant that, in the Northeast, that North Shields store, we were helping start-up businesses, we were helping established businesses, we were starting to network people and bring them together. So when a customer came to, they might be just buying a printer or a computer, but you'd talk to them, you'd find out what their pressures were, and then you go, oh, hold on a minute, I dealt with someone yesterday that I think, that's kind of where my love for B2B came in, my love for partnerships, because I could see actually the power of all working together. And obviously in that shop, we were uniquely placed because we had about 3,000, 4,000 customers that were regular, and therefore we could link them all together, and as a result, everybody grew. So that worked very well. Like I say, we grew incredibly quickly. It's number one in the company, and then I was given a regional role, which was to look after North East Scotland and Islands. Up until that point, they'd been trying to give me that role for a few years, if I'm absolutely honest with you, but my kids were little. So I'd always said with my wife that once the kids started school, then I'd put my career back. Until then, I was happy just to stay in the shops and be able to be there for the weekends and do all the school stuff. But yeah, once they got to school, proper school, then yeah, I went regional, because that was a bit of time on the road. That happened to be 2008, which you might remember, a bit of a problem in 2008, when the economy crashed. But North East Scotland and Ireland for PC World Business were in growth, 80% growth year on year against a backdrop of a company that was down 40%. So yeah, it worked incredibly well. And again, that really, I enjoyed that time, because that showed me that what we'd done in North Shields wasn't a one-off, and that gave me a lot of confidence that actually the ability and the skill set and the methods, you could apply that, and actually remotely, because I wasn't in those shops on a day-to-day basis. I was on the end of a phone, or I was visiting once every month, I was able to empower 24 people to deliver that level of growth across their stores.
And as you moved up through the organisation and came into contact with more and more different people in different locations, are there any either characters that stand out that you remember? And how did you manage to maybe sort of share learning, share best practices you sort of became responsible for a bigger geography? Yeah,
I think there's two different people you learn from. The ones that are brilliant, you take a lot of the good stuff and you think, I wish I was as good at that, as whether it be, I don't know, motivation or public speaking, and you would start to really look at how is it that they're doing that. And there's a few people, local here. Callum Osborne was a fantastic manager that really showed me a lot. He taught me a lot around NLP and how you can really, really help people. And like you say, from an empowerment point of view, he was probably the strongest leader I had in that kind of space. But equally, and I'm not going to name them, you learn probably more from the bad ones, don't you? Because you learn what not to do and where not to go. So I'll not name those ones, but there's been plenty of those that I've came across over my 20 years at Dixon's, where you can see, you learn and you watch them and you think that's not how to do it. Generally it's when people are command and conquer type style, lack of trust or micromanagement, that type of, you see that, and it kind of gives you a shock reminder of never creep into that type of territory, and I think I learned a lot through, I mentioned earlier, MBTI, which is a personality style thing. So I learned a lot about myself, and again, I was very, very fortunate. Dixon's were brilliant at investing in their people, as the big rest. So I learned very quickly what my style was, and therefore, when the pressure's on, I'll revert to type. And there's certain things that are not good and not helpful, and I'm not a good manager if I go into that pressure mode, because I will micromanage, I will tell people what to do. So knowing that means that I could adapt and make sure that actually when the pressure was on, I actively worked very hard to stay away from kind of, like I say, imposing myself and telling people what to do.
It's incredibly powerful, that, isn't it? I've done Myers-Briggs in the past, and we've used various tools like that, and I often think it's a shame that you tend to only get exposed to that reasonably late in your career. It's tend to be used for senior managers, and I think the earlier in your career that you understand yourself and you understand where you do go under pressure, I think people could accelerate their career progression and their growth if they understood that earlier. Certainly when I did it, it made sense of a lot of my behaviours in the past. Yeah.
No, I agree. You know, I say I was lucky because Dixons were fantastic. I was actually 20 when I went through the leadership or the management. I got my first shop at 21, so very, I do everything early. So that for me, and again, that's why I built a leadership program at Vivup. Because, like I say, people are getting this very early in their careers for that very reason. Because for me, it's not just about learning about yourself and your type. It's understanding difference and how to embrace difference.
Indeed.
So, you know, when I meet somebody for the first time, it's programmed in me because I've done it for 25 years now. You know, you're not putting people in boxes, but I am working out where they are on the various different scales, you know. And a lot of people think I'm a heavy extrovert. I'm not. I'm actually quite in the middle. I think I'll score 8 on the. So when I'm meeting people, I'm understanding, are they more extrovert than me? In which case, am I going to have to push myself into their area and be a lot more, I guess, assertive and louder and kind of meet them, or are they more introvert than me? In which case, I'm going to slow myself down. I'm just going to make sure that I give thinking time. You know, so I guess the earlier you do that, the quicker you are able, and the better you are at adapting to other people's styles, which makes people feel comfortable. And that's why I'll always be a massive fan of leadership training and Myers-Briggs and tools like that.
Okay. And as you move around the organisation, you're sort of self-deprecating enough to say that some of the opportunities came by circumstance. At what stage did you think, actually, I'm now moving in the direction that I want to go in, and start to more consciously pick up experience that broadened your skill set or your experience base?
Yeah, good question. I never did that. So,
great answer.
My boss, Mick Thompson, who was also another Geordie, and Phil Burback, actually, the two of them, they used to, I used to get asked all the time, like everybody does, what's your 5-year plan? And I'd always say the same thing, I don't know. I haven't got one.
But that's interesting, because you've got a very clear 5-year plan that you present to the people in the Vivup business, but you didn't have one yourself.
Yeah, personally, and I still don't have a 5-year plan. I have no idea what I want to be in 12 months' time. You know, my 3 rules are, as long as I'm enjoying myself, I'm adding value, and I've got autonomy to do stuff and my team can thrive, then I'm happy. If one of those 3 things is broken, then I've got a problem and it has to be fixed. If 2 of them are broken, I'm off, you know. And I guess I think that's important. So no, I've never had that strong plan. What I do is opportunities happen, and then I either take them or I don't, you know. And there's lots of opportunities over my kind of 25 years of working that have came my way. You know, I could have left Dixons plenty of times. You can imagine working in B2B, the opportunities I was presented with, the companies that wanted me to work for them, and I stayed with Dixons because of their investment in people, because of the teams, the loyalty that I have for the teams as well. And I was ticking those 3 boxes. I was enjoying myself, I was adding value, and I was able to develop my team. So why would I leave? You know, because going somewhere else would have been uncertain. I always like new challenges. I tend to, within Dixons, I would fix things. So if there was an area that was, nobody had a clue what to do with it, or there was an opportunity, or there was a broken team, I would naturally gravitate to that. And I think in business, there's probably 3 types of people, isn't there? You know, you've got builders, you've got dismantlers, and you've got people who maintain. I don't understand how anyone could dismantle a business, so I don't know how, you know, liquidators and administrators do it. Maintaining, I physically couldn't do it, because all I can ever do is grow, because you help people, and naturally that's what happens. So yeah, I'm a builder, so therefore I would always go wherever the building needed to be done.
Okay. And you mentioned the opportunities that come up if you're operating in a B2B role. That's how you came into contact with Vivup originally, isn't it? It
is, yes. Yeah. So Vivup were, they were clients of a team of mine that I called Strategic Partners. And I met with the founders. It was probably about every quarterly or monthly I would attend the QBR, the Quarterly Business Review, with Matt, one of the account manager for them. I liked them as people. I could see the business was growing, but it was Matt's account, he ran it, and I would just give Matt coaching support and help him. Then I can recall when GDPR came in, things got a little bit tough for them, because like a lot of businesses, they went from a user base they could talk to nobody overnight. They actually had just rebranded as Vivup at that point from the previous. I got a little bit more involved at that point, and I started to have weekly or bi-weekly meetings with the founders of the business, to help them. And that's where I realized just how transferable the skills that I had at Dixons were into the real world, as I would call it. And since then I've described myself as a specialist generalist. I know enough about every single area of business that nobody could blag me, and I could give anyone tangible advice to go and do something, whether that's technology, marketing, it doesn't matter. You know, I can handle any of those areas. So that's what I enjoyed with Vivup at the time. And that's what made me mind up to leave Dixon's, because actually what I was able to do in 1 hour every week or every 2 weeks over that Christmas with the founders was it was enlightening. I loved it. And that's when I realized that actually big corporate probably was the time to leave. And where I said earlier on, there was those 3 rules. All of a sudden I stopped enjoying what I was doing because I wanted to do some of that stuff over there. And that's what I did.
Okay. And having spent 2 decades in that corporate environment and having had all those opportunities, it's still quite a brave thing to step out into an organisation that had been around, I think, since 2005. And I think when you joined, an office of sort of 17. What, break-even point. Did you, I guess it's easy with hindsight now, what scale of potential did you see when you first came into contact with the founders?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a clue, and I didn't leave Dixon's to go to Vivup. I left Dixon's because I decided that I wanted to work in a different environment, and I stopped enjoying it, and that was a big problem for me. As it happens, the company at that point decided to do a restructure, which broke my rule number 2, which meant that I couldn't support my team, and my team's growth was going to be inhibited. They were removing a large proportion of my team, so 2 of my rules are broken. So as I said, I needed to leave. So, and it was the hardest thing ever. You know, I can remember being in that room with Mick and with Judy, and they were brilliant in the way that we did it. But it was like, 20 years of your life. I'd been there since I was 17. I knew nothing else other than that business, and all of the imposter syndrome comes straight in. I thought, how the hell am I going to get a job? I don't have a degree. I don't have this. I can remember looking at the jobs market and thinking, I can't even get it.
Wild still hiring.
Well, yeah, but they actually had come back after they've reopened for a little bit. But everyone needed a degree, and I thought, well, I've got 20 years of great experience. I built all these teams, and I can't even get an interview for any of these big corporates. That's it. Like I said, I wasn't massively interested in the corporates, but that's when I remember receiving the phone call from the founder who tracked me down, got my mobile number, personal one, obviously, because one of the team had given it to him, and he said, Simon, when you're ready to talk, come in. Talk, and you can have the business, do what you want with it. It's yours, I want you to run this. I trust you to scale it. And
that's quite a remarkable thing to get a call that way.
It was incredible. It was the relief and the pressure that was off. As I say, at that point I was doubting myself and what I could do with the future. So I went down, I met with them. They told me what the reality of what the past 2 years had been like, and how they wanted to exit ultimately, and that they wanted help to do that. And I thought, I'll do it. I said I'd give them 3 months. I would review it first and foremost, because like I said, I didn't know what the potential was. I only knew a tiny part of that business. So I looked at it. I put together a plan, so a strategic plan, the same as I would for any Dixon's team, to be honest with you. As I said, I was used to the SME mentality, just lots of times inside one corporate. So I did that, and I fell in love with the business because everything I looked at was fantastic. The opportunity was great. The mission was good, and their ability to help people was untapped. And I thought, I now can't walk away, which is why I agreed to take it on permanently.
Just briefly on that, sorry Sam, but that ability to help people, I recall when we first met over a year ago now, you mentioned in terms of being able to help people, the average saving that an employee on the Vivup platform achieves through a year. Do you mind just sharing that? Because I remember being astounded.
Yeah. So through lifestyle saving, so this is the saving money off the stuff you're buying anyway. Between £2,000 and £3,000 on average is how much I'd expect anyone to save. And they say that's not incrementally spending; that's the money that you're spending today anyway, and just going through the Vivup method. So saving on your supermarket, saving on eating out or cinemas or the desirable purchases, whatever it is. Yeah, and it's a massive number.
Ability to help people is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did the founders ever give you feedback as to why they'd been brave enough to pick up the phone to you?
No, to be honest with you. They very much tell me it's the best decision they've ever made in their life. They've said that several times, but no one. Well, yes and no. It was the support I give them. I think they realised not that they're out of their depth, but like a lot of founders, when you know your stuff, you're a specialist in a particular area. As your business gets bigger, a good founder or good has to appreciate you need to get some external knowledge and talent, because that's not your area of expertise. They're not growth specialists. They don't know how to scale businesses. They don't think in the way that I do, and they've done a brilliant job to grow a fantastic business. Let's be fair, there's not many people that could have had a business that support 500,000 NHS workers, which is what they had, and it was hats off to them to do that, because I don't think I could have created a business in the way they could. I'm confident I could walk into any business and transform it, but actually having the idea and the get up and go to create it and get it from scratch, that was what they were good at. And Mike, and Jane, fantastic entrepreneurs for doing that. But yeah, I think the biggest skill that they've got at that point was to realize, I need help. I can't take this any further. I've got it as far as I can. I'm now scared of the scale, and I don't know where to go. And I think a lot of founders just don't get there, and that's why they hang on to it, or they bring people in but don't give them the autonomy to actually do the job. So,
yeah. You mentioned the values that the business has. Were they in place when you joined, or was that an exercise that you went through as you essentially got to the point of taking over as CEO?
They'd actually just rebranded from Connected Benefits to Vivup about a year prior, and the values had been instilled. So actually, the 5 values, when they were if they were wrong, I would have changed them. But the 5 values are absolutely bang on, and we've lived and breathed that still to this day. Okay,
great. And the business has such a clear sense of purpose and a mission that everybody in the organisation buys into. Has it felt very different being in such a mission-led business? I'm sure Dixon's PC World had a mission as well, but it's maybe not got quite the same sense of social purpose.
Yeah, it feels like it's a mission that can be delivered, and I think with most corporates, and it's no disrespect to corporates, they do try everything. The mission is never going to be achieved, is it, in the vast majority of corporates, because they're just too big. There's just too many people to impact. While in a smaller business, you can absolutely make sure that every activity you do delivers. So, yeah.
Okay, super. And then thinking about the transition from joining the business, originally giving them some advice, to becoming CEO, you've been kind enough to say that at different times you've had a wee bit of imposter syndrome. When it came to actually taking the reins as CEO, what gave you the confidence to do it, and did you have any doubts?
No, not at that point. I'd already been doing it for about 18 months. I just didn't change my title because I don't think titles are important. I had to change my title to a CEO because I brought in a chief operating officer and a chief customer officer, and it looked after if I had a title that looked less.
So back to your kind of rule of do the role first before you get the role. You'd actually done that yourself.
I've been doing it for a good time.
Yeah. I was interested, obviously people can come to the role of CEO from various different functional specialisms. So you came from a sales background, people can come from ops, from finance. Increasingly we see chief people officers making that step, marketing, and then I suppose technology experts. So you're a sales expert who then came up that route to CEO. You said that at that time you already felt comfortable that you knew enough about all of them. Were there any particular areas of the CEO role that you thought have a little blind spot there? Is there anything that you've found more challenging?
Not really, because as I say, one of the good things about my corporate background is I was involved in pretty much every area. I guess finance was the area I was probably less involved in from a money markets and the transactional area of it. But I think for a lot of CEOs that will always be the case, because you're having to go and find funding for the first time, So yes, I lent heavily on my CFO for that part of it. But it's also the area that I've spent the most time in the past 18 months myself. As I said, I needed to teach myself private equity. I needed to teach myself the financial or the banking areas of it. So yeah, it's just meant I've spent more time there. But I think wherever that area is, I would have just spent more time.
Great. And if we had the opportunity in the future to speak to the operating board in the business, how do you think they would describe your leadership style?
That's a very good question, isn't it? I think that's a one for them, not me. I would hope and believe that they the fact I know they would say that I am trusting. It's exactly what I said before. The empowering. I think as much as I do find it icky to say it, but I am a good leader of people. I do motivate. They say I've got a clear vision and make sure that's instilled in everybody in the business. So I think that's what they see. You know, I really do drive that business. Like I say, I don't get hands on with the small details. That's for them to decide how to run their teams, what have you. But as far as the overall vision and strategy for the company, I make sure that they are equipped to deliver that.
Okay. And you mentioned at different times it's obviously been a very intense journey at Vivup. A lot's happened, a lot of great success in a very short space of time. What do you do to decompress and unwind when you're not full on the business?
To be fair, the bigger we get, the less stressed I am, which is really bizarre. Because it's fun, I do enjoy what I do, you know, and I think that comes across when I meet people, whether it's, you know, internal or external to the company. You know, I do genuinely enjoy what I do. So, and I know it's really, really sad and cliche to say if you enjoy what you do, it's not working, but that is what it feels like. I get pressure, and again, I do talk to people about the difference between pressure and stress. You know, pressure's good, stress isn't, you know, and as long as you never kind of let one become the second, then it's fine. You know, I love my home life. You know, obviously I live up over Durham way. I enjoy football. We go on lots of holidays. You know, my kids are at uni now, so I completed that one too. I managed to get them to survive to adulthood. So I've got my life back and I can go on all the holidays and do all the fun stuff, but it's great. I just enjoy spending time with them when they're here, or, you know, I think next weekend we're down in London as a family with my mum, dad, my 2 kids and my wife, you know. So for me, that type of stuff, I live for enjoying myself outside of work, and that's why all those family values and all that work-life balance stuff's critical for the team, because I live and breathe that. I don't work on a weekend, you know. And again, how many CEOs genuinely don't work on a weekend, you know? If there was something that was critical, fair enough, I'll dip in, I'll do it. But I mean, in a year, probably 10 hours across a year, maybe that I'd work on a weekend. That's and it's not normal. I do it. I understand that, you know.
But you are setting that example to the team. And do you extend that to kind of emailing out of hours? I know there's I'm poor for that. I send emails at all hours. I know that, you know, there's a growing body of thought that Simon's the recipient of a lot of those emails. That, you know, not doing that sets the example to the people that you work with that, you know, we don't expect you to be working all hours, so we don't expect you to respond to this. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it's for everyone to be individual. So as a business, we've got a lot of flexible working. So we've got people on, I think it's about 60% of the company work flexibly. So while we're remote, we've also got different patterns. So like 4-day weeks, 9 days in 10, that type of stuff. You've got people who clock in and clock out. You've got 0-hour workers when they're at university. So we've got lots of patterns to suit everybody. So actually, there is no such thing as in hours and out of hours, because I don't know what everybody else's hours are. I spend a lot of time.
As well.
Well, it depends. If you do 12 hours a day, that's probably not right. But, you know, when I'm on a train, everyone knows when I'm on a train, because that's when I can catch up. Because, you know, if I'm doing stuff like today, I have no idea what's on my emails. I don't have any alerts coming through. So I'll deal with that type of stuff on a train. And I've got 3 hours twice a week to do that. But I don't expect people to instantly respond back to me or anything like that. None of that matters. And it really is important that everyone can understand that it's about the output, not the input. You know, obviously, to a level, you know, don't get paid for 40 hours and do 2. But yeah, as long as we achieve the results, all is good. When you work, it doesn't bother me. And like I say, there are some people that do work weekends. We've clearly got customer services. We've got people on the phone then. Some of our flexible workers that have got like clocking in and clocking out. It suits their lifestyle to work on a weekend. That's absolutely fine. I'm just saying work-life balance is important. And therefore for me, the weekend is my time where I switch off. I do stuff with a family or with friends, or go to the football, watch Newcastle dominate and have fantastic results.
You mentioned when you very start of your career, you first went into a sales role, and if you don't mind me saying so, from what you described, you're natural at it. Your personality worked in that, your ability to listen and respond. In terms of your leadership style, to what extent are you naturally being you, and to what extent are you proactively thinking about how you approach the role of being a leader? Is it all intuitive? Is it just you naturally happen to be good at it, or are you managing your own instincts to think this will achieve the best result?
That's a really good question. And I think it's a combination of both, because there's things that I'm very good naturally at, and there's stuff that I'm not very good at naturally. I talk a lot about unconsciously incompetence and then move into consciously incompetence. So basically, first is you don't know that you're rubbish at something, then you know you're rubbish at it, then you consciously become good at it, and then eventually you become unconsciously good at it. There's a lot of things in my career where I started being very bad and I had no idea. Now I'm very good at it and I don't have to think about it, but there's as many where I have to actively work hard still. And there will be things, and there are things, I'm not going to talk through what they are, my team know who they are, that I know that I will always have to work hard on. In fact, one example is when I've got a cold, which is I've got right now, I am very snappy. I've got no patience, no tolerance, and I'm a nightmare to be around. But that means, and I'll never ever be good at that naturally. I'll always have to know, Simon, just calm down, give people a bit more slack, or, you know, see an email, don't react to it, get a phone call, don't react to it. You know, that's I think it's important for all of us to have a bit of self-awareness. So yeah, like I said, there'll be things in all four of those boxes at any one time, and it's just important to know what they are.
Okay, fantastic. We had a section here on the future, and you've already told us that you don't plan ahead personally and you don't plan what your future is. So we'll cut that element short, although I am intrigued to understand, actually when we first got to know you was when we were working with you on the recruitment of your current chair. Interested to know, even if you don't tend to plan long term, whether NED chair opportunities are something in your long-term future that you've thought about, and what your reflections are on, you know, in this rapid journey that you've been on in SMA PE, working alongside a chairperson is, I imagine, new to you. Well, I know it was. What's your reflections on that, and is that something that you quite you would like to do yourself?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think Wayne's been fantastic for me with Wayne Story, our chairman. I think I've never, as you say, I've never worked with a chairman before, but I have worked with some fantastic bosses, and those, you know, people like Mick and Callum, you know, they felt like chairs in the way that they operated, in the way that they would give me the push, they ask the right questions. It's more like a mentor, I guess, and I think that's exactly what Wayne's been. You know, he's helped me to professionalize some areas of the business, which I would never have known to do that, because I've never been in that position. As I said, when you are the first time, and a CEO is a lonely role, because you can't talk to your team, because you're running that team, so you've got to get that support externally, and that's where Wayne's been brilliant for me. So yeah, I think I also enjoy coaching and mentoring, whether it's my team or people external to the business. So I can absolutely see at some point in the future that is something I will absolutely be interested in doing. Hopefully I've got a little bit of mileage in the tank left. I still need to become the UK's number one employee benefits company. Obviously, when I merge with PerkBox, we'll be the UK's number two. So we've got a way to go.
Okay, good. Right, you've been incredibly giving of your time, so we are going to close with a couple of what we've called snappily killer questions.
We say we called them killer questions, you call them killer questions. Well, I wasn't actually going to ask one of them, because I think we've almost sort of covered ground that shows that there isn't just one essential for successful leadership. I think you've covered all sorts of different aspects that have made the business successful. And the other way, there's a second question been written as to what you would tell your 20-year-old self that would have accelerated your career. But by the time you were 20, you'd already done quite a lot. But as you reflect and look back, and maybe thinking about advice that other people might benefit from, you know, it's exam season, GCSEs, A-levels going on at the moment. What piece of advice would you give to those guys going through that process at the moment about how they think about finding their path for the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is be yourself. You know, that's all you can be. You know, don't try and be somebody else. You know, learn from other people, whether it's good or bad, but always be yourself, be true to yourself, and do things your way. You know, and if people can't accept that,
opposite of the advice that you were getting during your time about don't stop.
Okay, yeah, but it's true. You know, I think if somebody can't accept you for who you are, they're not worth being around. You know, and find the company, the people, whatever it is that accept you for being you. And I think that's something that I've talked to the kids about a lot. You know, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of about my children, is that they are themselves. They haven't followed the kind of traditional rules, and they're fantastic people as a result of that. So yeah, just be yourself. It's the biggest and most important. It's also what makes you happy in what you do, you know. Yeah,
fantastic.
Super.
And we have covered a lot of ground, but I will ask these. So what is you've covered a myriad of things which are important to leadership, but what's the one thing, if you had to pick one, that you think is essential for successful leadership in a high growth business?
Clarity. Making sure that people understand what you're trying to achieve. So the communication, so there's a plan, this is how we're going to achieve it. If people don't know where you're trying to get to, funny enough, you ain't going to get there. So number one is absolutely just giving that clarity to the team. Everything else will follow.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming in today and being so giving of your time and speaking so freely. We massively appreciate it. So,
thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Cheers.